Hi, I'm Taylor Kinnerup.
And I'm Kate Ourada.
This week, KTAR has shared with you its latest special series, Without a Home, a KTAR special series on homelessness in the Valley.
Our reporters have brought you stories breaking down some of the greatest causes of homelessness and shared stories of those experiencing homelessness in the state.
Here are some of those conversations.
8,200 people in Maricopa County were experiencing homelessness for this year. 1,240 of those people were experiencing homelessness for the first time. They are seeing an increase in seniors, and the CEO of CAS actually called this the silver tsunami. They've been seeing this coming for a while, that more seniors are going to experience homelessness, and the numbers are really reflecting that. Currently, there is an increase in seniors, and it's raised 21% since March of 2022. Wow. And they really said that's because seniors are on a fixed income. And when you see housing and the cost of housing really rising in Maricopa County, when you're on a fixed income, you can no longer afford your rent.
What are some of the solutions that places like CAS and MAG are offering?
Yeah, so they are saying we need more transitional housing because the cost of housing in the Valley, I mean, it is skyrocketed. Rent is unaffordable. We've covered it pretty heavily here at KTAR. You saw this boom, this population growth, and there's a lack of housing and a lack of affordable housing, but it takes a while to build an apartment complex. Not only do you have to get the permits and the zoning, then you have to build it, and you also have to have the workforce to do it. And we're in the middle of a workforce shortage across the entire United States. So what we need is, both CAS and MAG said this, more transitional housing. Is that taking hotels and turning them into a place where these people can stay for a couple of months until they find that Section 8 housing that will accept them, or until there is another affordable housing unit built and they can move into that. Transitional housing is something where you can use buildings that are already available, and people can immediately go into that because it's going to take a lot of time to build that affordable housing in the Valley.
You've been covering economics in the Valley for years. Not to make you sound old, but you are a senior reporter. So was any of this news surprising to you as you were going through this?
Maybe on a surface level, no, but the more you read into it, how intertwined all of this is, the economics. There are a lot of people, if not already homeless, say maybe a paycheck away from becoming homeless because of, we had inflation over the past, several months. We all came through the pandemic, higher rental prices. We have some of the highest home prices in the country. We have a real lack of affordable housing on the rental front, on the home ownership front, and not a lot of homes in the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 range. Not a lot of homes in the $150,000, $250,000 range. So that really puts a crimp on a lot of people. Even though everybody that I spoke with, they feel like this is a pretty big challenge to deal with. A really big challenge to deal with. Everybody I talked to, Rachel Milne, Suzanne Feaster, were very confident that this can be. Certainly, we're going to be miles ahead. It's certainly not from lack of effort, because there are a lot of people working on this right now, and it's at almost every level imaginable. It's, city, county, state, federal. Both, when I spoke with them, were very relieved with the Biden administration's recent announcement of the All Inside program. Phoenix, for better or worse, is one of the 6 areas in the country that the Biden administration is focusing on as far as homeless. Others include, the state of California and other locations. But I'm confident that everything that they can do, every step they can take, is being done right now. And I wish them well. I think that they're giving it a big effort to eat into this problem.
So, Balin, can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, as we as a station are moving in to look more into the homelessness issue in the Valley, I wanted to look specifically at youth homelessness. I wanted to see what some of the challenges are within that population, and also some of the solutions and opportunities. So I ended up speaking to a nonprofit in the Valley called Homeless Youth Connection. They help kids stay in school who are experiencing homelessness, typically on their own, but sometimes with families. I spoke of Don Bogart, who's their co-CEO. I also ended up speaking to a youth named Benjamin Johnson. He's 18 years old. He just graduated. Really great kid. And he was recently kicked out from his home by his adoptive mother. So he was somebody I spoke to for this story, as well as Don. And I actually got to tour their new living facility. So Homeless Youth Connection in Central Phoenix opened they call it a transitional living facility. And it's for these youth who are on the streets for whatever reason. It's basically, you can think of it like a net, right? It's a place for them to go. The only requirement is that you're in school and you don't have a safe place at night, and you're working to, after school, get a job, go into college. They help you get there. So I spoke with Benjamin. He lives there with his twin brother. They gave me a tour of the facility. I believe they have 20 beds that they've added to Central Phoenix, and they had 8 kids living there when I was there. Really cool facility, full kitchen, laundry. It's better than where I'm living now.
What do you hope listeners take away from your story?
There was something that Dana Bailey, again from HYC, told me that kind of stuck out to me. It's another thing that didn't make it into my stories, but she said that anytime someone on the streets or living in a hotel wants to go get help, and receive these services that we talk a lot about in all these different stories for homelessness, it's going to be, and this probably isn't like a data point, but just off her top of her set, she said it's going to be about 5 different nonprofits to help each person. So 5 different nonprofits helping each person. There's a lot of care and attention coming from a lot of different people. There is a whole system happening around you that you don't see, of so many people putting so much effort in every day to help the people on the streets. It is not a passive system. It is not something that is just bureaucratical and is automated somewhere. It's people on the streets. It's people posting, asking, hey, can someone please send some water my way so I can give it to this family living in an encampment somewhere. So there's so much care and attention coming from so many people. And I want to emphasize what I said earlier about the way HYC gives that help, which is, and not just HYC, pretty much all of these nonprofits. It's great to help with a pair of fresh clothes or hygiene products or any of these common needs that you see. Thank you. But at the end of the day, it's the positivity you share and the hope you share and the actually showing someone that you believe they can get out of this, that also makes a really, really big difference. And that's not to say it's just peace and love, baby. I mean, that's part of what comes in wraparound services. You need that. You need someone keeping a close eye on you, and you need someone to actually care.
I tackled veteran homelessness, which is obviously a really big issue here locally, especially. These veterans have served their country well. Obviously, it's you want to be able to help out those who have given so much to serve their country, and now they come back home and they're having a hard time transitioning. They find themselves on the streets. It's just a really sad story overall.
So what I loved from your story was the man you spoke with, Chuck Ashby, and he talked about early on in your story, talking about homelessness and veterans issues, all like a language. Can you kind of talk about that quote?
Yeah, and it was funny. He actually said he spoke 3 languages because he's a veteran himself. He was somebody who struggled with drug abuse himself, and he's somebody who is homeless himself. So the people who are coming to him needing support, he's been through that walk of life. He's lived it. He feels like he can connect. He can use those experiences to really show them that success is possible, and use his own experiences to relate and really help in that regard.
You had an opportunity to see the Human Services campus in downtown. What was that like?
Yeah, again, it's kind of speaking to the collaborative effort, the Human Services campus, a few different organizations are there, kind of all teaming up within that building. But there was a place for people to get shade. There were cots that people could sleep on. There's an outdoor patio space where people could congregate with shade. They actually had some AC units set up outside in the shade that people could sit by. So it just seemed like a nice place. It was actually right next to the zone. So centrally located to where people could come in, receive services if they chose to.
I covered a couple different people in my story. First of all, I covered John Merkel, someone who experienced homelessness, now who helps people who are in the shoes he was in kind of get a leg up, get back into some stability where they can grow and get out of that situation. I also spoke with Samantha Jackson. She works with Valley of the Sun United Way, a local nonprofit, and she describes them as kind of like a connector. They bring other nonprofits, professionals, volunteers, funding sources together to address issues, and one of those is homelessness.
So, looking at your story overall, what do you hope listeners take away from it?
I think the person whose voice to me is most compelling and most interesting and kind of startling in some ways to hear from is John Merkel. Again, was homeless for several years, now is working at a shelter with Cass. And he kind of described to me what it's like being in that shelter and knowing I can't stay here. I got to get out of here. I got to get a job. I have to get my own place to live. I have to line something up. But as he describes, it's really not easy. The other thing I think is really interesting about him is he does have this unique perspective. He actually said that he doesn't tell all the people he works with that he used to be homeless. He wants them to just see him as someone in the shelter that's there to help them. But he does tell some people, and he thinks like that connection is really strong and kind of gives some of those people some hope and a thought that, it's not inescapable. And that's the thing I would want people to take away the most from listening to this is that it is possible to happen to people, and even people who don't think it's ever going to happen to them, even people who have a support system, even people who think they're set. It is not, some ridiculous thing, some impossibility that you could end up in a similar situation, but also that with hard work, with help, it's possible to get out of that situation, to lift yourself up and to better your life. And then, like John did, turn around and help other people better theirs.
Can you talk about kind of the differences you're seeing between maybe the homelessness in the success stories and maybe some of the experiences you had at the Zone and how they might differ?
Yeah, so I went down to the Zone about a year ago now, before it was kind of being called the Zone, but I think people were kind of aware of it because, again, there are just these portions of just outside downtown Phoenix, not too far from the state capitol even, where you would just see lots of tents gathered, and I think that did grab a lot of people's attention. They're wondering what's going on here. So I went there to talk about the summer heat and how that was affecting people, right? I went at the height of summer. It's super hot outside. I spoke to doctors talking about just the challenges that face populations like that. I mean, pavement burns. Some of them don't have shoes. He even said people will get hit by cars and just be laying on the asphalt. Pavement burns, and then the other things as well, dehydration, heat stroke, things like that will happen to anyone if they're in the heat that long, and think of how much more magnified that is when you're living in a tent. You have some shade, that's better than nothing, but that's not going to protect you from the heat. So we went out there, and the way we wanted to cover it was very specific, because with people like that in vulnerable situations like that, you don't want to show them on their worst day. You don't want to use them as props. You don't want to kind of shine this light on them in a way that's going to be, unfair, in a way that's not going to be able to share the whole story of how they got there. So it was less about interviewing these people and more about talking with them, having conversations with them. And I think the thing that struck me most is there are a lot of people there who do feel kind of like they don't have a shot, who do feel like this was where they were going to end up. I went there with Jeremy, our videographer, and we went inside a couple tents just to kind of talk to the guys, and a couple people said like, yeah, I'm going to die out here. Wow. There's not really a point, this is what it is. We talked to people who clearly were going through mental crises and people who were having a hard time and weren't necessarily aware of their situation in a way that you could say, okay, if we gave this person some resources, they might not be able to do it themselves. They might need some help. They might need someone to walk them through it. They might need someone to get them to a place where they are a little more mentally capable of dealing with this stuff, of digging themselves out of the hole, or they might need more help along the whole process, which again, going back to talking about shelter services is part of that conversation. Certain shelters will have more ability to help people with those type of things.
Without a Home, airing this week on the KTAR News app and 92.3.